Welcome to Showdown. I'm Mark Kaysen, and it's Friday. We've finally made it to Friday, a week after an incredible election result that has actually led many people around the country to go to YouTube and ask the question, how can I reverse my vote? Now, the problem is you can't change your vote. That anybody should know that. But nevertheless, there are people who would like to know how. It's too late now, people. We've got this guy. But you know what? It's not the end of the world, even though it may feel like it. And we're going to be talking to some people who are also running for serious high offices here in Jefferson City. And let's just bring in first Michaela. So Michaela Clark, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm terrific. I know you're out walking the streets of Jefferson City,
I am.
presumably trying to drum up votes. Is that it?
Yes, that is part of it. Actually, I've walked a lot in Jeff City today. Just going and talking to delegates and trying to convince them to vote for me.
Okay, so you're running for governor, but tell us which governor this actually is.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Which governor is this for? In other words, this isn't governor of Missouri. It's governor of.
Okay, I'm running for governor. For the YMCA Youth and Government Missouri Lewis Convention.
Right, and it's a very serious operation for sure, and you know there are many hundreds. What is it? Almost 600 this time.
Yes. We have over 550 delegates.
So somewhere close. Right. So these are students from all over the state of Missouri. And
yes.
I heard you speak this morning. And in fact, I've heard a number of candidates. And I was especially interested in what you had to say. And if you could talk a little to the audience about what you told the delegates.
So when I came into YAG in my freshman year, I was like completely petrified. I have an anxiety disorder and ADHD, so public speaking was just like not really something on my priority list. But from that conference, it started a fire within me that like has just continued to grow. I've become so much more confident, and youth and government really taught me the power of my voice, and that even though I may not be able to vote, I am able to influence policy and influence change by speaking. I helped lead a walkout at my school in January in response to a decision by my school board that did not reflect the interests of the students. And then
yeah, and by the way, let me interrupt you for a second. First of all, we and I love what you're saying. I've got Micaiah and she's working with another media person. So let's bring them in.
Hi. Hi.
Okay. So first of all, I've got you, Micaiah, and I'm sorry. I want to get your correct pronunciation.
Manyale.
Manyale. Okay. Very good. Okay. And the two of you are actually involved in media in this whole conference.
Oh yes.
And apparently I've also got Elizabeth, who is joining in as well. So hello, Elizabeth.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Now, are you, Elizabeth? Are you in media, or are you running for office?
I am running for Attorney General.
Okay, very good. So what we're going to do is go back to Michaela, and I apologize for having interrupted you there, Michaela, but I want to say this as you get moving along. First of all, I always tell students or anybody that's speaking not to apologize for anything in their speech, but actually you did not. I thought that it was very appropriate for you to talk about where you stood when all of this started, and how you've grown throughout your work, and I can tell that you've grown because you've grown to a point of being very professional. But I also wanted to ask, you had said that there was a reason for that walkout at your school. Tell me about that. What
Right,
was the reason?
um I am a student at Francis Howell High School in the Francis Howell School District in St. Charles, Missouri. And in December, our school board decided to, out of the blue, try to remove two of our Black history courses. One of them was a Black literature class, which was an English elective that only 11th graders and 12th graders are allowed to take. And then they also tried to remove Black history class that, once again, only 11th graders and 12th graders are allowed to take, uh, under the pretenses that they were too political, except they were unable to prove that there was any legitimate reason for them to be removing the classes other than the subtle racism that they didn't want to necessarily address. And so us high school students in the Francis Howell School District were not okay with that, and we were very vocal about it. And so at the beginning of January, when we returned to school after winter break, we organized a walkout at all three of our high schools. And you can find news articles about it. There are several of them. But that's what led to us leading a walkout. And it also led to us speaking at several school board meetings, because our school board has become progressively more conservative in recent years. And instead of favoring the ideals of the students, they have favored the ideas of political parties and candidates, which is not what a school board is in place to do.
Yeah. And by the way, just so you know, first, I work with Black Studies at Washington University, and there are a number of people over there who have developed, actually over the last 10 years, a journal called the Baldwin Review, which of course relates to the work of James Baldwin. Of course, he's been dead for 30 plus years, but was a leading spokesperson and writer during the civil rights era. And my students at Cardinal Ritter have actually written, Michaela, about you, because they wrote about your walkout, and they wrote about how they felt about the attempts to stop Black history, and they wrote in our school newspaper. And so along the way, I would like to maybe get that to you so you can see what some of the students said. But we're so glad to have you here because this is a very serious problem in our country. I don't have to tell you, you're facing it at Francis Howell, but this actually is taking place across the United States. An attempt to block lots of things having to do with Black literacy and Black education and Black history for sure. And my students are certainly outraged over this, and we hope that we can reach people around the United States. I know that Francis Howell has attempted to, in some small way, walk this back, but there's no walking it back, because this is really what people across America think. It's certainly the Black, the white population across this country is they're not kidding about this. They've been trying to do this for years, and somehow they've become emboldened. And I'd love for you and our other students here to speak to that and to the great work that you're all doing at YAG. So go ahead, Michaela.
Sorry, what do you want me to talk about? Like I've yeah.
Well, I just wanted you to speak first of all to the attempts to stop learning about Black literacy, Black history. So we can start with
Yeah,
that.
as I stated, like we did a walkout, and many of us students showed up to a school board meeting to express our disdain for it. And then since then, like in April, I helped canvass for our school board election and help like raise information on two of our like school board electees who luckily were able to win, which kept our school board from going like to a 7 out of 7 majority of conservatives. And so our goal now is just next election season in April to continue voting in members who represent the ideals for the students rather than ideals of politicians that frankly don't care about the well-being of students in schools.
Right. So let me first go to Elizabeth, and then we'll go to Michaela and Nanyale. So Elizabeth, running for Attorney General in the Youth in Government program, what do you think about, first of all, your program, and secondly about the problem that Michaela has confronted in her school district?
I definitely think in this program, I think it's such a great resource for so many people and such a great way to learn about what's happening in our history and creating civic literacy. Because a lot of people know a lot of politics from the media and stuff, but they don't actually know what's actually happening behind the scenes. And like what Michaela did, she was educating and informing her community about a real struggle that is happening. Because I personally feel like trying to erase history doesn't negate its bad effects. Trying to erase history doesn't negate the fact that it happened, and it's going to continue to keep happening if we don't learn from it. So I feel like Michaela walking out on her school and showing that people are not okay with negating history is a very powerful and impactful thing. I think it's something that we should continue to reach out into other schools and into this program. It's very important to recognize that a lot of people have been treated badly for a very long period of time. And just by negating the fact, trying to forget that that happened, it doesn't take away their pain. It doesn't take away that hardship that they endured. So I feel like it's important to recognize that and then learn from that and recover from that. Did that answer your question?
Okay, so no, that's great. That's great. And Michaela and Manuela, let me defer to both of you who are involved in media. And I think this is so important for people who are watching to understand that you all are not just going to a conference and playing at this. You all are truly attempting to influence our society, which is facing serious challenges. How do you feel about that in your media work?
Well, I feel like with us, like getting to like I guess photograph other like individuals that are trying to like make an impact more like the youth source. I feel like it's like very like I don't know like impactful to us like Michaela and Elizabeth who's like saying it can like have like a greater impact than us. So like we can like maybe I guess like want to do better as well like as they're moving towards like what they want to do. And I guess do you have anything to say?
Nope, you got it. Mr. Casey,
Okay.
what was
Yes,
the
go
question
ahead.
one more time?
Well, no, I'm just interested in how you all feel about the fact that you're not just being students involved in some kind of a classroom activity. You are part of the real world, and you're an important part in dealing with an issue that faces our entire country.
And we get to show that through media. And, Makai does photography. I do newsletter. And so maybe what we do is we get to tell you what happens when we are here at YAG, or the important things to make us feel heard at YAG. And so that correlates with the real world as well.
Yeah. Do you watch journalism in the real world? Are you
Not
connected to
gonna
that?
lie, I don't.
I mean, I sometimes do, mostly like in history class. As you know, like you're a history teacher, so sometimes we may like watch documentaries or like different journalists talk about like things like with racism maybe, or just things that have happened in the world that's been brought up. But yeah.
Okay. So let me go back to Michaela. In your work in YAG, what do you tell your potential voters over this weekend? What you're planning to do? What you think you can accomplish?
Um, One of like my major things when I've been discussing with delegates on why they should vote for me is that I'm very dedicated to the things that I love. And like for example, me walking out of my school, an example of dedication for things that I love because I love social justice. I love to make heard and not just make sure people's voices are heard. And like, I will not be silent um, to like allow for a certain demographic of voices. And so my goal, if I do become governor of the conference, is to ensure everyone's voices are heard and to just make our like overall our conference run smoothly and just like amount of resources we have available for each sector of this conference.
Okay. So Elizabeth, I have a question for you. Uh, you're running for Attorney
Yes.
General of the YAG conference. First of all, what do you do as Attorney
Well,
General? How
Attorney
does that
General
work?
basically presides over the entire judicial side of YAG. So basically, when the case comes out, it's our responsibility to help the decision of choosing the case and also implementing it. It's also our responsibility to make sure that every single attorney and judge is adequately prepared. So like we provide resources, we provide help. Like when they get to semifinals and finals, we're there to help advise them, and we're just here to walk around and help with cases. We're really just here to make sure that there's a lessened amount of confusion whenever it comes to the judicial process. Because I know personally, when I first came to YAG and I had my first case, I was afraid, and it was because of a lack of understanding. And I want to, as Attorney General, if I'm implemented, I really want to help reduce that lack of understanding for everybody there.
So this year, at the convention, you are you a judge? Are you involved in cases this year? What how are you handling that?
I am an attorney this year. So I've already had both of my cases. I had my respondent first and my petitioner argument.
Okay. So tell the audience a little bit about this case involving a public employee attempting to protest outside of
Yeah, of
work.
course. So in our case focused around Parks and Recreation. It's a made up case this year about the show Parks and Recreation, if you understand that. But the case is centered around this woman called Leslie Dillon, who was employed by the City of Devon government. And on her day off, she was awarded Fridays off every afternoon for 8 years by by her department like supervisor. So on that day off, it was found out that the school district decided to reduce funding for music education and also eliminate it completely for elementary students. And because Dylan also had two children who were impacted by music education, as well as a lot of people in the community, she decided to take up the idea to create a protest and march down the streets of Devon and then at City Hall, playing for all the children to play music and giving speeches at City Hall to show their disdain with the school board's um, decision. But the school board decided to say that their noise on the way down to City Hall violated the city's noise ordinance. And also, because of Dylan's protest, she was fired for her job. That is what Dylan is claiming. But the city of Devon is also claiming that she was fired because of her missing work days, because she wasn't logging them into the actual employee app that you're supposed to log it into if you miss a case through the Rain Day app. And so, even though she received unofficial permission from her supervisor, she still wasn't logging it into Rain Day. So that's the stance that the city of Devon is taking on that. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry, that was kind of a.
No, it does. And by the way, she of course claims that that she was given this unofficial okay to leave work early, and she claims that she was leaving under that permission uh, that was given to her by her employer. So I'm just a little interested, realizing that we operate under a rule of law and not simply over how we feel. Um, what's your feeling on this? Where do you think it should
I
be?
can honestly see where both sides are coming from on different topics. On the case of the noise ordinance, I understand where the city of Devon is coming from because even though the students were protesting for the music education, they were kind of making a public disturbance, and they were also not all playing the same song, and we're all kind of like very like discordant in a way. But I also understand where Leslie Dillon is coming from because she had received Fridays off for 8 years, and it just so happened that the Friday that this protest occurred, that's when she was fired. So my main question I've been asking myself is, if it was really about her absences, why didn't this happen earlier? Why wasn't it because of that? Even though she was supposed to be logging her absence through rain day, in our case material, we're also given how it went through the Court of Appeals and also the District Court. And in the dissent in the Court of Appeals, it was stated that Mayor Washington said goodbye to her on her way to the protest. So she was aware that that Dylan was leaving that day of the protest. So also makes me wonder, why didn't she say anything then? So I do feel like the protest played a substantial role in her firing, in my personal opinion. Anything outside the case, but I do also see where the city of Devon is coming from based on the noise ordinance. But honestly,
Sure.
it's so fun at YAG because you can see all these different opinions, and I don't really think any of these opinions is necessarily wrong. But I love seeing how other people like use different parts in arguments and in cases. It's very interesting to see.
Yeah, and in the arguments that are presented, they absolutely have to be presented along with case law
Yeah.
backing up their positions, right?
Yes. Yes, of course.
Yeah. Are you or any of the others that are here familiar with the 1980s case where Nazis attempted to march in Skokie, Illinois, to essentially antagonize a very heavily Jewish community of Holocaust survivors? Do you know the case?
No, I'm not aware of that case.
Yeah, that's not
No,
for you.
we're
I don't
not.
see that.
I'm not aware of that case either.
Okay, well that's all right. I need to have you in my government class. But let me ask this just off the top of your heads. Uh, what do you think? Should Nazis be allowed to march in a community largely filled with Jewish survivors from the Holocaust? And what do you think under the law? How does that sound to you?
I think an important distinction to make is the difference between a person's right to free speech and also hate speech is not really protected under the First Amendment. So if Nazis are coming in to a primarily Jewish community and like preaching hate about how their experience and their race, if that's what they're doing, I don't really think, I might be completely wrong about this, but if I remember correctly, I don't think hate speech is protected under the First Amendment. So if this considers it's considered hate speech, which I personally think going to a group of people and showing all, and you're actively against who they are and what they stand for, and you're telling them about that and telling them how much you like don't like them, if that's what they were doing, I think that that can be considered not protected, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, the Nazis, with restrictions that prevented them from going too far in antagonizing these citizens, they were allowed to protest in Skokie. But uh, I think even more interestingly, uh, it's the people that actually represented them as lawyers, which you might find interesting. And it turns out it was a group of Jewish lawyers from the ACLU who, in real life, wanted to protect the rights of Nazis. Why do you think that they were doing that?
I'm not sure if I know enough about the case to make a certain distinction on why they did that, but I guess that under law, everybody is offered the same amount of security. Like, there's no different laws for differing opinions. Because if you can create a law just because you don't like somebody's opinion, I'm not saying in any way that Nazi hate speech is okay in my personal opinion, but I feel like under the rule of law, everybody has to be held to an equal standard. If that makes any sense, I don't know if I'm certainly
No, no, it
qualified,
makes all the
but
sense there is. It makes all total sense, and I can, yes, personally I'm Jewish, but that's not even the point, because the law is the law, and we do afford everybody in this country the right to protest, no matter whether we don't like them. I mean, they could be Nazis, but in this country we do allow their speech, uh, even though we may despise what it is that they say, and so that's an important part of our system, and it's difficult for everybody to handle this, because we just don't like Nazis for sure.
I'm sorry. Oh, hi. Sorry, you cut out for a
Yeah,
second.
Michaela, we've got you sideways, but aside from that, if you can, are you able to sort of flip yourself around there? I'm sorry, Michaela. Michaela, can you flip your screen?
I'm not sure what happened. I'm like my I don't know, my phone like glitched.
You've got, you've got a great
So
connection now. We hear you perfectly. So
yeah,
what are you doing in this convention right now, Michaela? I mean, are you a judge, or are you a lawyer?
I am an attorney. I argue the same things that Elizabeth mentioned previously.
Okay. And what do you think about Leslie Dillon's right to protest during working hours?
I think that it's a tricky situation because, well, like, there is, there's claims on both sides that make sense. For the petitioner, Leslie Dillon, she had been taking that Friday afternoon off for the past 8 years. And so at that point, she had like implied consent that it would be fine if she went to the protest. And so for them to decide that suddenly, like, oh, we're going to fire her, like, they'd suggest retaliatory intent because she went to the protest. But I can also see, like, on the other hand, she didn't log that she wouldn't be there, and it's stated within her contract hours how she is to handle that, and so it's both sides have great arguments.
Yeah, I think one thing that might have been argued, and I haven't heard this exactly argued by anybody, but is that the fact that she was allowed out of work on other days may have been for some personal accommodations that were not directly related to this idea that she was going to take off to go protest. I don't know how is that something to consider here?
That's definitely something that I've brought up and I've seen other people bring up when
Okay.
arguing um this case, because yeah, like I said, it's a very tricky situation because both sides have great arguments as to why they think they're correct.
Okay. So to finish up here, I would love to hear just some last words from each of you, and then we'll let you go back to the convention. You want to start, Michaela?
Yeah, I can. I think that like the initiative that YMCA's Youth and Government program is just like a great, like it's a great way to get youth to understand their importance and how much like responsibility they have when it comes to the role of government, and like just the importance of your voice. Like I said in my speech, for why I'm running for governor. Um, I've learned so much about how incredibly important my voice is from going to these conferences, and I just think that like the continued initiative of involving youth in governmental processes, it's gonna like really like better impact the future than just choosing not to understand how America's government works, especially considering how tricky our government system is.
Sure. So also, let me say to you, Michaela, this is short notice. In a week, Washington University is going to have a couple hours of a student town hall meeting uh, through the Black Studies Department there. And if you were able to help us to pool some students from Francis Howell, which of course is embroiled in this other serious problem in the real world, we would love to have you come and
I'm
participate at WashU.
I'm actually a part of my school's Max Scholars program, so I'm pretty sure I might be able to get them to put an announcement out in our campus to see if students are interested.
Okay, so that would be very, very good. And do we have your email address?
I know Micaiah has it, so
Okay. And okay, we'll get it through Micaiah, so that'll be great. I appreciate that. I've got hers. So go ahead, Micaiah and Manayala, or here, let me get that right.
It's
Uh,
Minyale.
Menyale. Okay, there we go. Menyale. Uh, how about some last words from you?
Okay, so I will say before I joined media, I was a part of the judicial branch, like when I was like doing my casework. So I do know more about the Leslie Dillon case and everything that was going on. So I will say like with the youth and government program, it gets you to like get outside of your comfort zone and I guess have more confidence within like what you like with your abilities. Because at first coming into it, I was really nervous and I didn't really I mean I study obviously, but I was still nervous to what I would be able to like to say and what I was going to be able to provide for the judges. And but along with my other teammates, they kind of helped me get the confidence that I needed, and they helped me to I guess some case in the whole. And I just well after the fact that I presented, it gave me more confidence, and I did not think that I was going to do well at all. And I really believe in myself a lot more than I did before. And I will say that I'm coming back next year to do it again. Maybe it's even going to legislative branch or maybe to stay in the judicial again and do it over. But it has
Terrific.
been pretty fun.
And
Had an impact.
Micaiah,
Yes.
or here. So you're Micaiah.
I'm Makai.
Yeah, Manyale.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us a couple of last words?
Um, I feel like YAG has had a big impact on me, and especially when expressing myself through newsletter, because I know that I'm a pretty good writer. So when I get information, I can write about it. So it's giving me a chance to use my skills as of now, and I can use it as an adult.
Okay, thank you. And Elizabeth, from you. And what school are you in, Elizabeth?
I go to Visitation Academy.
Gotcha. Okay. So tell us, your last thoughts.
I definitely think YAG is so important to the youth in our community because these are the people that are going to be functioning in our community later. And it's so important to foster civic knowledge and to know how our government works and to know what stance you take and to know how to properly express yourself and to know how things are going on. Because I feel like miscommunication is really, and misinformation is a really big thing that happens in our world today. So I feel like educating the youth on how to combat that is a very important skill to have. And I know that my life changed when I came to YAG. I am so grateful that I came to this conference freshman year. It really helped me find my voice because I was always too afraid to speak up in places that I didn't understand or that I didn't know because I was afraid of being seen as like too opinionated or too loud or outspoken and like not really know what I'm talking about. But YAG really helped me find that confidence and it really helped me want to instill that confidence in others. And I think it's a really important program to have.
Okay. Let me also ask you, Elizabeth, are you able to write down my email
Oh,
address?
yes, I am.
Okay. So if you would email me so we can be in contact, and I'm at MarkKasen. That's my name.
M-
Mark Kasen.
MARKKAS.
Kasen.
Again.
at Yahoo.
Ian at yahoo.com.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, and because I would like to see if we can maybe get some visitation students over to WashU next Saturday too. So it's going to be a short town hall. It'll be from like 11 to 1.
Yeah, sure. I could do my best. Of course.
Okay. So we will talk to you, and thank you all for participating with
Yeah,
us.
thank you for having me.
Okay, you bet. Okay, so of course, we've got some business to do here. And thank you for all your great work in putting all these people together here in the studio, Joe. We love it. And so let me start by talking about where you can get a great dinner tonight at Wendy's. Wendy's is at 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road, and that's in Chesterfield Valley. And of course, there are the wings and the smoked meat and the hamburgers and the cheeseburgers and the patty melts. Greg Carell loves, that French dip. So we don't want to forget that. And I love the baby back ribs and onion rings. So everybody has different favorites. But one thing for sure, everybody that goes to Wendy's loves Wendy's. So do check them out. And remember that they also have the same great food at the Wendy's Roadhouse that you can find in Defiance. That's $29.99 South Highway 94, and that is Wendy's. Now, if you're looking for jewelry, well, you can find that at 4506 Hampton, and that is Jewels on Hampton. Jewels on Hampton will, first of all, provide you with cases filled with jewelry where you can walk around and just look at all of the great items that they have for sale. And then beyond that, they can help you designing jewelry. They can help you if you want to buy and sell jewels and coins. They're in business to do that as well. And when it's all said and done, they can even fix your watch. So that is Jewels on Hampton, the very great Al and his son AJ. They run the place, and you will love them there. That is Jewels on Hampton. Now, once again, I'm dressed in my St. Louis Suit Company attire, and everything I wear here is all from the St. Louis Suit Company, shirts and shoes and overcoats. I got my here too, because I just absolutely want to be comfortable when I go to this. I'm in Jefferson City, but it's really important for me to let people know that there's a place to go if you're a man looking for great clothing, and it is the St. Louis Suit Company in Clayton. They've been there for 30 years, and they're not kidding. They do a great job. Also, if you're getting married, everybody in St. Louis knows this is the place to go for wedding attire at the St. Louis Suit Company. Jay and Nick, father and son, they run the place, and of course, most of their family is also involved in great work at the St. Louis Suit Company after 30 years at Forsyth and Central. Still great at the St. Louis Suit Company. Now, this is Friday, and Friday is time for spaghetti and meatballs at Telena's. Telena's is at 141 and Olive. That's in Creve Coeur. Owned by Medi. This place has been operating for 40 years. So obviously someone likes it, and they keep coming back for great spaghetti and meatballs. That's my favorite, but everything else, it's just for Italian food. I just don't know where in the world you can go to beat Telena's, and that's why we talk about them. They are that good. So go to 141 and Olive in Creve Coeur, right next to the Deerbergs. That is Telena's. Well, we're winding down a very interesting week that unfortunately continues to put the United States in serious danger. which is very unfortunate. You know, when you come into a presidency, you would like to say, gee, I hope this president is going to be successful. And honestly, I would like Donald to be successful if he were capable. But unfortunately, he's not capable. He's got serious mental issues, as suggested by his niece, Mary Trump, who has talked about the reasons that she believes that he's a psychopath, a narcissist, however you want to describe it. The man has got problems. Here he is with an opportunity to come back and take charge of the White House in the United States after being 4 years out of office. And instead of coming back in an attempt to make things better, he's back here with the same crazy chaos that he used to run the country for 4 years previously. And I know that people like to say, they don't remember so well, but they like to say that the United States was doing great under Donald. Of course, we know that the United States was falling apart at the seams, and partly because when he tried to run the problems that came up during COVID, he was off in la la land talking about injecting bleach and taking horse tranquilizers and all kinds of other lunacy, which got him thrown out of office in 2020. Although he's back now saying that well, he won in 2020, and it's obvious he won because of the landslide victory in the recent election. We all know, of course, that this was no landslide victory, that Donald Trump won by the narrowest of margins, 1% margins in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. If things had moved 1.5% in the other direction, the president of the United States today would be Kamala Harris. We're not saying that Kamala should be president. She lost. But what we're saying is that this man who has come to take charge, instead of trying to bring this country together, is attempting to tear it apart. And in 1 week, he has done a fine job of achieving much of what he is attempting to do right now. And you know, one of the things he's trying to do, which this is not hidden, he and his group make this very clear. They're trying to tear down the administrative state in the United States. And just so you understand, that amounts to millions, in fact, tens of millions of people who are employed by the United States government to make our country work and to help be sure that people get health care and that people get emergency services during hurricanes and earthquakes, and to make sure that people are treated fairly when they pay their income tax, and to just do everything that we're supposed to do in order to make sure that people in the United States are properly protected by our government, and to make sure as well that our government acts properly overseas when we're trying to work with our allies, our partners around the world in order to try to keep things peaceful. We understand it's not always possible to keep things completely peaceful, but we know this, that over 75 years, the United States, by leading NATO, has prevented World War III. And here, as we stand in the mid-November period of 2024, we realize that here comes Donald Trump, and the world is shaking. Now, Donald says that that's great, that he just wants to make everybody in the world frightened so that they'll be afraid to do anything to anger the United States. But the fact is that at the same time, Donald's trying to tear down our state, trying to rip apart our healthcare system. And let me say this clearly so that nobody misunderstands the way I'm describing this and what it means. Donald has said that he wants, and this is brand new, I've not heard this one before, but he wants to stop all research into infectious diseases for 8 years. Now, how he came up with 8 years, I don't know. Maybe he thinks he's going to be there for 8 years because in his delusions, anything could be possible. But the point is to take US dollars away from the study of infectious diseases 4 years after one of the worst pandemics in the history of the world only tells you what this guy is trying to do. He is just trying to sow the greatest discord possible in a country that has held together for 240 plus years. And he is trying to do everything he can to rip it apart. And I'll tell you, I don't believe he'll do it, but I think there are a lot of people out here who are afraid that he'll do it. I can say that my brothers who love to criticize their older brother here and there, they enjoy it. It's fun, and that's fine. But the point is, they fear that Donald will destroy America, and they're talking about where they can move. They're talking about British Columbia in Canada. I talked to people here this week at the convention. I was shocked. There's so many people here who are talking about where in the world they can go. There are people talking about going to Panama. There are people talking about going to Paris. You know, James Baldwin left the United States in the 1960s and went to Paris. He was there for a number of years and then decided he had to come back to the United States because he thought he owed it to Black people here in the United States to push back against things that he thought were just horrific at that time. And believe me, what they were looking at in 1965 is nothing compared to what Donald is trying to do to America in 2024. And of course, if you want the details of all of this, how he wants to tear down the administrative state, you can read it. It's in Project 2025, which he said he never heard of, but we played on the air all the details of Donald asking the Heritage Foundation to produce this document, 900 plus pages, so that they could have a game plan for how they would run this country. But what they should have said is the truth, which is how they want to destroy this country. Do they want to destroy it just because they're psychopaths? I don't know. Do they want to destroy it because they have some connection to Vladimir Putin and they want to help him? I fear that. I see lots of reasons for believing that. One reason would be, I mean, this is a simple one. This is where they stood up in the Oval Office, giving each other high fives. And when I say they, the Russians and Donald Trump and the Russian media, and they were all there together taking pictures that were sent back to Russia. American journalists were not allowed in that room, and they were there for whatever work that they were planning to do together, and we're well aware of the fact that later on in the administration, Donald met with Vladimir Putin, and in the meeting that they had, what did they talk about? They talked about United States intelligence agencies Vladimir said that he was telling the truth, and Donald came back to us. And you can see this on Google, it's all online. He came back to us and said, when asked the question by Jonathan Lemire, do you trust the Russians or do you trust our agencies, our intelligence agencies in the United States? And Donald said he saw no reason to believe Putin was lying to him. Obviously, there are those who voted in this election who have forgotten about all of this, and that's okay too. But when it comes to their Social Security checks, when it comes to their grandparents' Social Security checks, when it comes to Medicare, when it comes to the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, studying infectious diseases in order to try to prevent the kind of results that we had during COVID. And by the way, just so you understand, there was a plan that was put together under COVID or prior to COVID by the Obama administration through the work of NIH. That plan was ripped up by Donald Trump and thrown in the trash. And Donald then spoke on tape to Bob Woodward and explained how he was going to solve the problems of COVID and how one person or two or three might get it, but that ultimately everything would be fine, nothing to worry about, and no reason to panic the people of the United States. 1 million people dead later. Donald couldn't even apologize. He couldn't even feel sorry that any of these bad things happened to people. He simply said he knew better. That he, as he always likes to say, he alone can solve the problems of the United States and the world. And then there are the people who have glommed onto him. Very, very sick and dangerous people like Matt Gaetz. And listen, I don't think we have to go through all the people. We could talk about Hegseth at the Defense Department, and we could talk about poor RFK Jr. And let me say, I saw RFK Jr.'s cousin, and that was one of the Shrivers, who on video said that clearly RFK's got some problems. Shriver did say that he would not abandon his cousin because family was important. But it didn't mean that he agreed that we should stop all funding of infectious disease studies, that we should remove from the water all the fluoride, that we should essentially tear down our healthcare system and wipe out all of the research that we do, which is research that is truly revered around the world. I mean, people come to the United States from everywhere, including China, in order to study under our university leaders. Because in this country, we care about learning, we care about knowledge, we care about fact, and we care about science. It is important. It is meaningful. It saves lives. But it also requires that you not take every bit of its work and tear it up and throw it in the trash. Because if you do, well, then you're going to kill 1 million people next time as well. And that's a problem for sure. Let me say this about the RFKs and the Matt Gaetzes and the Hegseths and all of these people out here that run to Donald, hoping that somehow that they might get some degree of fame, maybe even fortune, maybe even recognition among their peers, maybe recognition walking down the streets. I don't know what it is that they want, but I will say this. Hopefully, and so far, of course, it's not true, but hopefully, some of these people, before they destroy themselves, will just go to the example of Rudy Giuliani. Because, you know, Rudy is homeless. Rudy is starving. That's what Rudy says. I believe him. He has no way to pay for anything. He can't get any money to go out and buy a cup of coffee this afternoon. He's got nothing. He is a devastated man. He has been wiped out by Donald Trump. Donald Trump has destroyed Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani, who glommed on to Trump, like Matt Gaetz, like this Hegseth guy, like RFK Jr., they all want something. Maybe it's the same thing. I don't know what they want. But I know this much. Whatever it is, they better understand that they're going to get what Rudy got, which is the same thing that Mark Meadows is getting. It's the same thing that the rest of these defendants in Georgia are facing. And believe me, it's not only Georgia. There are cases being brought in other parts of the country. And it's true that for the moment, Donald has escaped by the skin of his teeth. He is fortunate enough under the United States system of elections. He was fortunate enough to barely win back the position of president of the United States. But understand this, the danger that he creates for the entire country is real. But beyond that, the endangerment of individuals who sign up to work in his administration it's equally as destructive and in many ways maybe even more, because the rest of us may survive 4 years of Donald Trump or maybe even 2 years of Donald Trump, because he may end up like Richard Nixon on a helicopter, you know, like this, I'm not a crook, and out of town. Now that may be where Donald is headed in 2 years. We'll see. Obviously, we're all going to find out the results. But don't forget this, and this is the most important thing that I can put in front of you today with regard to what Donald is doing to the people who are signing up in his administration. And by the way, let me add one more point to this before I make that point, and that is that Donald has told the United States senators that if they vote against his people, he will have them removed from the United States Senate. You don't believe it? Go look it up. It's there. It's true. But what's even more true and more evident is what Donald has done to Rudy Giuliani and all these people who have lost their law licenses, gone to jail. He's promising to let them all out. But let me tell you this. Look at Rudy. Follow Rudy. It's what's happening to Rudy that's going to happen to the rest of these people as well. You'll be homeless. You won't have any money for food or coffee or anything. And you'll be begging for help. Don't do it. This man's not worth it. So let me finish today by saying this. For the St. Louis Suit Company, for Wendy's, for Jules on Hampton, and 4 Telenas. I'm Mark Kaysen. This is Showdown. Good night.